Hi everybody, welcome back. I'm Jade Fish, and whether you're here watching the stream right now or coming in to the VOD later, I'm really glad you're here. This is our little corner at the ocean, soft reading, quiet thoughts, and just floating around together for a while. It feels nice today. I don't really have any big life updates today, which honestly feels kind of nice after everything for the past month. The only thing is, I had a really killer headache yesterday. It seems better now, but if I feel a little off, that's probably why. Like I said, I feel better now, but the stream might end a little earlier for health's sake, because I don't want to get sick. I don't want to stress myself out too much. So yeah, today might be just a slightest shorter drift if my brain decides it wants to throw a tantrum again. It was bad yesterday. So bad that I actually went to sleep early at 9 p.m., which is 21 on the 24-hour clock. And then I slept all the way until 8:30 today. So that's like 10 hours, 11 hours straight of just sleep. Which honestly feels like a dream, considering I get like 6 to 7 hours. Well, right? If usually 6 to 7 hours. So yeah. For tonight, or today, sorry, brain, we're continuing Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Still using my physical copy, still no screen sharing. Just page turning, quiet reading, and vibes. Last time we read chapters 19, 20, and 21, and stopping right before chapter 22. So today, we'll be starting from chapter 22. And my tiny goal today is, I just want to finish volume 1. Since volume 2 starts at chapter 24, I should be able to get there and finish chapter 24 by today, assuming my voice and brain cooperates. And I can't wait, because we're getting past the beginning and finally getting to the juicy middle part. Like always, I don't have a strict reading goal beyond that. We'll just follow the current until I hit an hour, or until I get tired, or until my voice decides to give up. So no pressure. You can stay the whole stream, or you can drift in and out whenever you want. So, before we start, what do you guys think of volume 1 so far? Or did it pull you in right away, or was it one of those stories that will take a little time for you to really get invested? For me, I think I was hooked by the second or third chapter. I loved Regency romance, fantasy romance, fantasy individually, romance individually. It's just my escape, you know? Anyway, once I start reading, I'll mostly be focused on the story. I might pause here and there to react or just think out loud, but overall this is a calm stream, so feel free to relax, study, draw, or just float around for a bit. Throw this in the background. Alright, let's drift back into the story. This is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, starting at chapter 22. The Bennets were engaged to dine with the Lucases, and again during the sheaf of the day was Miss Lucas so kind as to listen to Mr. Collins. Elizabeth took an opportunity of thanking her. "It keeps him in good humor," said she, "and I am more obliged to you than I can express." Charlotte assured her friend of her satisfaction in being useful, and that it amply repaid her for the little sacrifice of her time. This was very amiable, but Charlotte's kindness extended further than Elizabeth had any conception of. Its object was nothing less than to secure her from any return of Mr. Collins' address by engaging them towards herself. Such was Miss Lucas' scheme, and appearances were so favorable that when they parted at night, she would have felt almost sure of success if he had not been to leave Hertfordshire so very soon. But here she did injustice to the fire and independence of his character, for it led him to escape out of Longbourn House the next morning with amiable slyness and hasten to Lucas Lodge to throw himself at her feet. He was anxious to avoid the notice of his cousins, from a conviction that if they saw him depart, they could not fail to conjecture his design, and he was not willing to have the attempt known till its success could be known likewise. For though feeling almost secure, and with reason, for Charlotte has been tolerably encouraging, he was comparatively defeated since the adventures of Wednesday. His reception, however, was of the most flattering kind. Miss Lucas perceived him from an upper window as he walked towards the house, and instantly set out to meet him accidentally in the lane. But little had she dared to hope that so much love and eloquency awaited her there. In as short a time as Mr. Cullen's long speech would allow, everything was settled between them to the satisfaction of both, and as they entered the house, he earnestly entreated her to name the day that was to make him the happiest of men. And though such a solicitation must be waived for the present, the lady felt no inclination to trifle with his happiness. The stupidity with which he was favored by nature must guard his courtship from any charm that could make a woman wish for its countenance, as Miss Lucas, who accepted him solely for the pure and disinterested desire of an engagement, cared not how soon the establishment were gained. Sir William and Lady Lucas were speedily applied to for their consent, and it was bestowed with a most joyful alacrity. Mr. Cullen's present circumstances made it a most eligible match for their daughter, to whom they could give little fortune, and his prospects of future wealth were exceedingly fair. Lady Lucas began directly to calculate with more interest than the matter had ever excited before. By how many years longer Mr. Bennet was likely to live, and Sir Williams gave it as his decided opinion that whenever Mr. Cullen should be in possession of the Longbourn estate, it would be highly expedited that both he and his wife would soon make their appearance at St. James. The whole family, in short, were properly overjoyed on the occasion. The younger girls formed hope of coming out a year or two sooner than they might otherwise have done, and the boys were relieved from their apprehension of Charlotte's dying an old maid. Charlotte herself was tolerably composed. She had gained her point, and had time to consider it. Her reflections were in general satisfactory. Mr. Collins, to be sure, was neither sensible nor agreeable. His society was irksome, and his attachments to her must be imaginary, but still he would be her husband. Without thinking highly either of men or of matrimony, marriage had always been her object. It was the only honorable provision for a well-educated young woman of small fortune. And however uncertain of giving happiness must be their pleasantness preservative from want. This preservative she had now obtained, and at the age of 27, Without having ever been handsome, she felt all the good luck of it. The least agreeable circumstance in the business was the surprise it must occasion to Elizabeth Bennet, whose friendship she valued beyond that of any other person. Elizabeth would wonder, and probably would blame her, and though her resolution was not to be shaken, her feelings must be hurt by such disapprobation. She resolved to give her information herself, and therefore charged Mr. Collins, when he returned to Longbourn to dinner, to drop no hint of what had passed before any of the family. A promise of secrecy was, of course, very dutifully given, but it could not be kept without difficulty, for the curiosity excited by both his long absence burst forth in such very direct questions on his return, as required some ingenuity to evade. And he was at the same time exercising great self-denial. He was longing to publish his prosperous love. As he was to begin his journey too early in the morrow to see any of the family, the ceremony of leave-taking was performed when the ladies moved for the night. And Mr. Bennet and Miss Bennet, with great politeness and cordiality, said how happy they should be to see him at Longbourn again, whenever his other engagements might allow him to visit them. "My dear madam," he replied, "this invitation is particularly gratifying because it is what I have been hoping to receive, and you may be very certain that I shall avail myself of it as soon as possible." They were all astonished, and Mr. Bennet, who could by no means wish for so speedy a return, immediately said, "But is there no danger of Miss Catherine's disapprobation here, my good sir? You had better neglect your relations than run the risk of offending your patroness." "My dear sir," replied Mr. Collins, "I am particularly obliged to you for this friendly passion, and you may depend on my not taking so material a step without her ladyship's concurrence. You cannot be too much on your guard, risk anything rather than her displeasure. And if you find it likely to be raised by your coming to us again, which I should think extremely probable, stay quietly at home and be satisfied that we shall take no offense. Believe me, my dear sir, my gratitude is warmly excited by such affectionate attention, and depend upon it, you will speedily receive from me a letter of thanks for this, as well as for every other mark of your regard during my stay at Hertfordshire. As for my fair cousins, though my absence may not be long enough to render it necessary, I shall now take the liberty of wishing them health and happiness, not excepting my cousin Elizabeth." With proper civilities, the ladies then withdrew, all of them equally surprised to find that he mediated a quick return. Miss Bennet wished to understand by it that he thought of paying his addresses to one of her younger girls, and Mary might have been prevailed on to accept him. She rated his abilities much higher than any of the others. There was a solidity in his reflections which often struck her, and though by no means so clever as herself, she thought that if encouraged to read and improve himself by such an example as hers, he might become a very agreeable companion. But on the following morning, every hopes of this kind were done away. Miss Lucas called soon after breakfast, and in a private conference with Elizabeth, related the events of the day before. The possibility of Mr. Collins fancying himself in love with her friend had once occurred to Elizabeth within the last day or two, but that Charlotte would encourage him seemed almost as far as from possibility as she could encourage him herself, and her astonishment was consequently so great as to overcome at first the bounds of decorum, and she couldn't help but cry out, "Engaged to Collins? Mr. Collins, my dear Charlotte, impossible!" The steady countenance which Miss Lucas had commanded in telling her story gave away a momentary confusion here, on receiving so direct an approach, though it was no more than she expected. she soon regained her composure and calmly replied, "Why should you be surprised, my dear Eliza? Do you think it incredible that Mr. Cullen should be able to procure any woman's good opinion because he was not so happy as to succeed with you?" But Elizabeth had now recollected herself, and making a strong effort for it, was able to assure her with tolerable firmness that the prospect of a relationship was highly grateful to her, and that she wished her all the imaginable happiness. "I see what you are feeling," replied Charlotte. "You must be surprised, very much surprised, so lately as Mr. Collins was wishing to marry you. But when you have had time to think it over, I hope you will be satisfied with what I have done. I am not romantic, you know. I never was. I ask only a comfortable home. And considering Mr. Cullen's character, connections, and situation in life, I am convinced that my chance of happiness with him is as fair as most people can boast on entering the marriage state." Elizabeth quietly answered, "Undoubtedly." And after an awkward pause, they returned to the rest of the family. Charlotte did not stay much longer, and Elizabeth was then left to reflect on what she had heard. It was a long time before she came at all reconciled to the ideas of so unsuitable a match. The strangeness of Mr. Cullen's making 2 offers of marriage within 3 days was nothing in comparison to his now being accepted. She had always felt that Charlotte's opinion of matrimony was not exactly like her own, but she could not have supposed it possible that when called into action, she would have sacrificed every better feeling to worldly advantage. Charlotte, the wife of Mr. Collins, was a most humiliating picture, and to pang of a friend disgracing herself and sunk in her esteem was added to distressing conviction that it was impossible for her friends to be tolerably happy in the lot she had chosen. And that was chapter 22. Honestly, I understand Charlotte. While I would love a grand romance, something that will leave me withering and burning in me alive like a fiery, passionate romance, I don't see myself in that. I like reading it. I dream of having it, but I don't really see myself having it. Like Charlotte, I feel like I'd rather have stability than a dream-like romance because I want to feel safe. I want that stability. And I'm not sure if I have it in me to give all of myself to someone and take all of someone else into myself. I'm not sure because I just want to feel safe. I want to be able to go out with that person and feel safe. It's in the world right now, it's really hard to feel safe because there's so much going on. But I also understand Elizabeth feels like her friend is sacrificing her happiness for her safety, and that Charlotte will never be able to be happy. But I also think that Elizabeth is pushing her own ideas of what happiness is going to look like onto her friend, which isn't really fair. It's such a mess. I can't wait to see what happens next. Oh my god, I just remembered Mrs. Bennet's gonna go ballistic. I have to see what goes next. Oh my god. Okay, chapter 23. Elizabeth was sitting with her mother and sisters, reflecting on what she had heard. and doubting whether she were authorized to mention it. When Sir William Lucas himself appeared, sent by his daughter to announce her engagement to the family. With many compliments to them and much self-gratification on the prospects of a connection between the houses, he unfolded the matter to an audience not merely wondering but incredulous, for Miss Bennet, with more perseverance than politeness, protested he must be entirely mistaken, and Lydia, almost unguarded and often uncivil, boastfully exclaimed, "Good Lord, Sir Williams, how could you tell such a story? Do you not know that Sir Collins wants to marry Lizzie?" Nothing less than compliance of a courtier could have borne without anger such treatment, but Sir Collins' good breeding carried him throughout it all. Though he begged leave to be positive as to the truth of his information, he listened to all their impudence with most forbearing courtesy. Elizabeth, feeling incumbent of her own to relieve him of such present situation, now put herself forward to confirm his account, by mentioning her prior knowledge of it from Charlotte herself, and endeavored to put a stop to the explanations of her mother and sisters, by the earnestness of her congratulations to Sir Williams, in which she readily joined by Jane, and by making a variety of remarks on the happiness that might be expected from the match, the excellent character of Mr. Collins, and the convenient distance from henceforth from London. Miss Bennet was in fact too much overpowered to say a great deal, while Mr. Collins remained, but no sooner had he left them than her feelings found a rapid vent. In the first place, she persisted in disbelieving the whole of the matter. Secondly, she was very sure that Mr. Collins had been taken in. Thirdly, she trusted that they would never be happy together. And fourthly, that the match might be broken off. Two inferences, however, were plainly deduced from the whole. One, that Elizabeth was the real cause of all the mischief, and the other, that she herself had been viciously used by them all. And on those 2 points she principally dwelled during the rest of the day. Nothing could console, and nothing appeased her. Nor did the day wear out her resentment. A week elapsed before she could see Elizabeth without scolding her. A month passed before she could speak to Sir Collins or Lady Lucas without being rude. And many months were gone before she could at all forgive their daughter. Mr. Bennet's emotions were much more tranquil on the occasion, and such as he did experience, he pronounced to be the most agreeable sort. For it gratified him, he said, to discover that Charlotte Lucas, whom he had used to think probably sensible, was as foolish as his wife and more foolish than his daughter. Jane confessed herself a little surprised at the match, but she said less of her astonishment than her earnest desire for their happiness. Nor could Elizabeth persuade her to consider it as improbable. Kitty and Lydia were far more envying Miss Lucas, for Mr. Collins was only a clergyman, and it affected them in no other way than a piece of news to spread at Marytown. Lady Lucas could not be insensible of triumph of being able to retort on Miss Bennet the comfort of having a daughter well married, and she called at Longbourn rather oftener than usual to say how happy she was, though Miss Bennet's sour look and ill-natured remarks might have been enough to drive happiness away. Between Charlotte and Elizabeth there was a restraint which kept them mutually silent on the subject. But Elizabeth felt persuaded that no real confidence could ever subsist between them again. Her disappointment in Charlotte made her turn with fonder regard to her sister, of whom vicissitude and delicacy she was sure her opinion could never be shaken, and for whose happiness she grew daily more anxious, as Bingley had now been gone a week, and nothing was heard of his return. Jane had sent Caroline an early answer to her letter, and was counting the days till she might reasonably hope to hear again. The promised letter of thanks from Mr. Collins arrived on Tuesday, addressed to their father and written with all the solemnity of gratitude with which a 12 months abode and the family might have prompted. After discharging his conscience on that head, he proceeded to inform them with many rapturous expressions of his happiness in having obtained the affection of their amiable neighbor, Miss Lucas, and then explained that it was merely with the view of her enjoying her society that he had been so rarely close with their kind wishes of seeing him again at Longbourn. Further, he hoped to be able to return on Monday fortnight. For Lady Catherine, he addressed so heartily approved his marriage, that she wished to take place as soon as possible, which he trusted would be an unanswerable agreement with his amiable Charlotte to name an early day for making him the happiest man. Mr. Charlotte's return to Hunsford was no longer a matter of pleasure to Miss Bennet. On the contrary, she was as much disposed to complain of it as her husband. It was very strange that he should come to Longbourn instead of to Lucas Lodge. It was also very inconvenient and exceedingly troublesome. She hated having visitors in the house while her health was so indifferent, and lovers were of all people the most disagreeable. Such were the gentle murmurs of Miss Bennet, and they gave way only to the greater distress of Mr. Bingley's continued absence. Neither Jane nor Elizabeth were comfortable on this subject. Day after day passed without bringing any other tidings of him than the report which shortly prevailed in Marytown of his coming no more to Netherfield the whole winter. A report which highly incensed Miss Bennet, and which she never failed to contradict as a most scandalous false rumor. Even Elizabeth began to fear, not that Bingley was indifferent, but that his sisters would be successful in keeping him away. Unwilling as she was to admit an idea as so destructive to Jane's happiness and so dishonorable to the stability of her lover, she could not prevent its frequently reoccurring. The united efforts of his two unfeeling sisters and of his overpowering friend, assisted by the attractions of Miss Darcy and the amusements of London, might be too much, she feared, for the strength of his attachment. As for Jane, her anxiety under this suspense was, of course, more painful than Elizabeth's. But whenever she felt she was desirous of concealment, and between herself and Elizabeth, therefore, the subject was never alluded to. But as no such delicacy restrained her mother, an hour solemn passed in which she did not talk of Bingley, express her impatience of his arrival, or even require Jane to confess that if he does not come back, she should think herself very ill-used. It needed all Jane's steady mildness to bear these attacks with tolerable tranquillity. Mr. Collins returned most punctual on the Monday fortnight, and his reception at Longbourn was not quite so gracious as it had been on his first introduction. He was too happy, however, to need much attention, and luckily for the others, the business of love-making relieved them from a great deal of his company. The chief of every day was spent by him at Lucas Lodge, and he sometimes returned to Longbourn only in time to make an apology for his absence before the family went to bed. Miss Bennet was really in a most pitiable state. The very mention of anything concerning the match threw her into an agony of ill humor, and whether she went, she was sure of hearing it talked of. The sight of Miss Lucas was odious to her. As her successor in that house, she regarded her with jealous abhorrence. Whenever Charlotte came to see them, she concluded her to be anticipating the hours of possession. and whenever she spoke in a low voice to Mr. Collins, was convinced that they were talking of the Longbourn estate, and resolving to turn herself and her daughters out of the house as soon as Mr. Bennet was dead. She complained bitterly of all this to her husband. "Indeed, Mr. Bennet," said she, "it is very hard to think that Charlotte Lucas should ever be a mistress of this house, that I should be forced to make way for her, and live to see her take my place in it. My dear, do not give way to such gloomy thoughts. Let us hope for better things. Let us flatter ourselves that I may be the survivor." This was not very consoling to Miss Bennet, and therefore, instead of making any answer, she went on as before. "I cannot bear to think that they should have all of this estate. If it was not for the entailment, I should not mind it." "What should not you mind?" "I should not mind anything at all. Let us be thankful that you are preserved from an estate of such insensibility." "I never can be thankful, Mr. Bennet, for anything about the entail. However, any one could have the consequence to entail away an estate from one's own daughters. I cannot understand. And all of the sake for Mr. Collins, too. Why should he have it more than anybody else? I leave it to you to determine," said Mr. Bennet. And that is the end of chapter 23. I was right. Miss Bennet did go ballistic. And I can't believe that Mr. Bennet said that Charlotte Lucas was foolish. Like, yes, he's a man, he might not understand that women in this time period kind of need marriage to survive, especially in women of their status who are literally not allowed to work without lowering their value, quote unquote. But still, Charlotte is being smart. She's securing her future. She is making sure she has a way to live and to not be an old maid and to not burden, quote unquote, her family with her. Anyways, and Miss Bennet, like, even if you're not happy, don't show it that much. You're just, honestly, Charlotte is your daughter's friend. You should at least not show your anger so openly about it. It's not as if Miss Charlotte just stole Mr. Collins away from Elizabeth. Elizabeth literally pushed Mr. Collins to her. And as for Elizabeth, she's still pushing her ideas of happiness onto Charlotte, insisting that Charlotte won't be happy. But she could be happy. She could. Elizabeth can't decide that for her. Whatever, that's the end of volume 1. Let's go on to chapter 24. And I think I'll stop after this chapter. Miss Bingley's letter arrived and put an end to doubt. The very first sentence conveyed the assurance of their being all settled in London for the winter, and concluded that her brother's regret at not having had time to pay his respects as friend at Hunsford Shire before he left the country. Hope was entirely over, and when Jane could attain to the rest of the letter, she found little except the professed affection of the writer, that could give her any comfort. Miss Darcy's praise occupied the chief of it. Her many attentions were again dwelt on, and Caroline boasted joyfully of their increasing intimacy, and ventured to predict the accomplishment of the wishes which had been unfolded in her former letter. She wrote also with great pleasure of her brother's being an inmate of Mr. Darcy's house, and mentioned with raptures some plans of the latter with regard to furniture. Elizabeth, to whom Jane very soon committed the chief of all this, heard it in silent indignation. Her was divided between concern for her sister and resentment against all of the others. To Caroline's assertion that of her brother being partial to Miss Darcy she paid no credit. That he was really fond of Jane, she doubted any more than she had ever done. And much as she had always been disposed to like him, could not think without anger, hardly without contempt, on the easiness of temper, that want of proper resolution, which now make him the slave of his designated friends, and led him to sacrifice his own happiness to the caprice of their inclinations. Had his own happiness, however, been the only sacrifice, he might have been allowed to sport with it in whichever manner he thought best. But her sister's was involved in it, as she thought he might be sensible himself. It was a subject, in short, on which reflections would be long indulged and must be unavailable. She could think of nothing else, and yet whether Bingley's regard had really died away, or were suppressed by his friend's interference, whether he had awareness of Jane's attachment, or whether it had escaped his observation, whichever were the case, though his opinions of him must be materially affected by the difference, her sister's situation remained the same, her peace equally wounded. A day or two passed before Jane had the courage to speak of her feelings to Elizabeth, but at last, on Miss Bennet's leaving them together, after a long irritation than the usual about Netherfield and its master, she could not help saying, "Oh, that my dear mother had more command over herself. She can have no idea of the pain she gave me by her continual reflections on him. But I will not repine. I cannot last long. He will be forgotten, and we shall all be as we were before." Elizabeth looked at her sister with incredulous stolidity, but said nothing. "You doubt me," cried Jane, slightly coloring. "Indeed, you have no reason. He may live in my memory as the most amiable man of my acquaintance. But that is all. I have nothing either to hope or fear, and nothing to reproach him with. Thank God, I have not that pain. Little time, therefore, I shall certainly try to get the better." With a stronger voice, she soon added, "I have this comfort, immediately, that it has not been more than an error of fancy on my side, and that it has done no harm to anyone but myself." "My dear Jane," exclaimed Elizabeth, "you are too good. Your sweetness and disinterestedness are really angelic. I do not know what to say to you. I feel as if I have never done you justice, or loved you as you deserve." Miss Bennet eagerly disclaimed all extraordinary merit and threw back the praise on her sister's warm affection. "Nay, Elizabeth, this is not fair. You wish to think all the world respectable, and are hurt if I speak ill of anybody. I only want to think you perfect, and that you set yourself against it. Do not be afraid of my running into any excuse of my encroachment on your privilege of universal goodwill. You need not. There are few people whom I really love, and still fewer of whom I think well. The more I see of the world, the more I am dissatisfied with it, and every day confirms my belief of the inconsistency of all human character, and of the little dependence that can be placed on the appearance of either merit or sense. I have met with two instances lately. One I cannot mention, the other is Charlotte's marriage. It is unaccountable, every view in it unaccountable. My dear Lizzie, do not give way to such feelings as these. They will ruin your happiness. Do not make allowances enough for difference of situation and temper. Consider Mr. Cullen's respectability and Miss Charlotte's prudence, steady character. Remember that she is one of the large families that, as to fortune, it is a most eligible match. And be ready to believe, for everybody's sake, that she may feel something like regard and esteem for our cousin. To oblige you, I would try to believe almost anything, but no one else could be benefited by such a belief as this. For were I persuaded that Charlotte had any regard for him, I should only think worse of her understanding than I now do of her heart. My dear Jane, Mr. Collins is a conceited, pompous, narrow-minded, silly man. You know he is, as well do I do, and you must feel, as well as I do, that the woman who marries him cannot have a proper way of thinking. You shall not defend her, though it is Charlotte, Lucas. You shall not, for the sake of one's individual, change the meaning of principle and integrity, nor endeavor to persuade yourself or me that selfishness is prudence, and insensibility of danger security for happiness. I must think your language too strong in speaking of both, replied Jane, and I hope you will be convinced of it by seeing them happy together. But enough of this. You alluded to something else. You mentioned 2 instances. I cannot misunderstand you, but I entreat you, dear Lizzie, not to pain me by thinking that person to blame and saying your opinion of him suck. You must not be so ready to fancy yourselves intentionally injured. We must not expect a lively young man to always be so guarded and circumspect. It is very often nothing but our own vanity that deceives us. Women fancy admiration means more than it does, and men take care that they should. If it is designatedly so, they cannot be justified. But I have no idea of there being so much design in the world as some persons imagine. And I am far from attributing any part of Mr. Bingley's conduct to design, said Elizabeth, but without scheming to do wrong, or to make others unhappy. There may be error and there may be misery. Thoughtlessness wants of attention to other people's feelings, and wanted resolution will do the business. And do you impute it to either of those? Yes, to the last. But as I go on, I shall displease you by saying what I think of persons you esteem. Stop me whilst you can. You persist, then, in supposing his sisters influence him? Yes, in conjunction with his friend. I cannot believe it. Why should they try to influence him? They can only wish his happiness, and if he attached to me, no other woman can secure it. Your first position is false. They may wish many things besides his happiness. They may wish his increase of wealth, and in consequence, they may wish him to marry a girl who has all the importance of money, great connections, and pride. Beyond a doubt, they do wish him to choose Miss Darcy, replied Jane, but this may be from better feelings than you are supposing. They have known her much longer than they have known me. No wonder they love her better. But whatever may be their own wishes, it is very unlikely they should have opposed his brothers. What sister would think herself at the liberty to do it, unless there were something very objectionable? If they believed him to be attached to me, they would not try to part us. If he were so, they would not succeed. By supposing such an affection, you make everybody acting unnaturally and wrong, and me most unhappy. Do not distress me by the idea. I am not ashamed of having been mistaken, or at least it is slight. It is nothing in comparison to what I feel in thinking ill of him as his sisters. Let me take it in the best light, in the light in which it may be understood. Elizabeth could not oppose such a wish, and from this time Mr. Bingley's name was scarcely mentioned between them. Miss Bennet continued to wonder and repine of his returning no more, and though a day soon passed in which Elizabeth did not account for it clearly, there seemed little chance of her ever considering it with less perplexity. Her daughter endeavored to convince her of what she did not believe herself, that his attention to Jane had been merely the effect of a common and transitioning like. which ceased when he saw her no more. But though the probability of such statement was admitted at the time, he had the same story to repeat every day. Miss Bennet's best comfort was that Mr. Bingley's must be down again in the summer. Mr. Bennet did the matter differently. "Still, Lizzie," said he one day, "your sister is crossed in love. I congratulate her. Next to being married, a girl likes to be crossed in love a little now and then. It is something to think of and give her a sort of distinction among her companions. When is it your turn to come? Will you hardly bear too long outdone by Jane? Now is your time. Here are officers enough at Marytown to disappoint all the young ladies in the country. Let Wickham's be your man. He is a pleasant fellow, and will jilt you creditably." "Thank you, sir, but a less agreeable man would satisfy me. I must not all expect Jane's good fortune." "True," said Mr. Bennet, "but it is comfort to think that whatever that kind may befall you, you have an affectionate mother who will always make the most of it." Mr. Wickham's society was of material service in dispelling the gloom which the late preserved occurrence had thrown on many of the Longbourn family. They saw him often, and to his other recommendations was now attitude of general unreserve. The whole of what Elizabeth had heard, his claims on Mr. Darcy, and all he had suffered from him, was now openly acknowledged and publicly confessed, and everybody was pleased to think how much they had always disliked Mr. Darcy, before they had known any of the matter. Miss Bennet was the only creature who could suppose there might be any excruciating circumstances in the case, unknown to the society of Hampshire. Her mild and steady candor always planned for allowances and urged the possibility of mistakes. But by everybody else, Mr. Darcy was commended as the worst of men. And that was the end of chapter 24. Honestly, I felt Elizabeth very pushy in this chapter. Like, she's pushing her own ideas of everything onto her sisters, onto her friend. She is very much her mother's daughter in this, even if she seems to refuse to acknowledge that. Whatever. That was volume 1 done. We started chapter 24, which means the start of volume 2. And I am feeling tired, and my throat is getting tired too. So I'll wrap it up here. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story so far. We are going to... This book has... how many chapters? Let me check. I know this is a table of contents. There are 61 chapters. We just finished chapter 24, so we are almost halfway done. I think this will go on for like a year. Oh, I'm so sorry. But I hope you'll enjoy it. And thank you so much for swimming by. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I hope my voice gave you a little bit of comfort during these trying times. And I hope you'll have a wonderful day, a lovely night, and if you're dreaming, peaceful dreams. Goodbye.